Some countries are measured by borders. Australia is measured by space. Here, distance is not an absence. It is a presence. Land stretches outward without interruption. Horizons remain visible for long periods. Movement slows, not because it must, but because the land allows it. Australia does not compress experience. It expands it. This is a continent shaped by age, by geology older than memory, by rivers that move slowly, and by landforms that have remained stable for immense spans of time. The journey begins across a place where scale itself becomes the story. Australia exists as both a country and a continent. Its geological foundation is among the oldest on Earth. Large portions of the land have remained tectonically stable for hundreds of millions of years. This stability shaped everything that followed. Mountains are low and weathered. Rivers travel long distances without steep descent. Plains extend uninterrupted between coast and interior. Isolation allowed ecosystems to develop independently. Human settlement arrived late, adapting to land that demanded respect rather than transformation. Cities formed along the coast, where water and transport allowed access. The interior remained vast, open, and lightly settled. Australia's identity emerges from this contrast, between dense edges and a spacious center. Before moving deeper, a brief pause. If this calm beginning feels meaningful, a gentle subscribe helps support the journey and keeps these films alive. Now, Australia begins to unfold. The Outback. Space as structure. The Australian Outback covers much of the interior. It is not a single place, but a vast system of arid and semi-arid regions defined by distance and openness. Here, the land stretches without enclosure. Vegetation remains low and sparse. The ground carries evidence of long-term erosion rather than recent change. Movement through the outback follows necessity. Roads are long and direct. Settlements are widely spaced, appearing only where water and access allow. Rivers in this region flow intermittently, responding to seasonal patterns. Their paths are broad, etched deeply into the land over immense time. Life here adapted carefully. Communities developed resilience, not expansion. Infrastructure prioritizes survival and connection rather than density. The outback does not reveal itself quickly. Its scale becomes clear only by remaining within it, by allowing distance to exist without interruption. This is a landscape that asks for patience and rewards it with clarity. Transition. The land sets the pace. Across Australia, the land determines rhythm. Speed gives way to duration. Movement follows open lines. Nothing presses inward. This approach shapes every region that follows. The Great Barrier Reef, a living system. At scale off Australia's northeastern coast lies one of the largest living systems on Earth. The Great Barrier Reef is not a single structure. It is a network. Thousands of individual reefs spread across a vast marine area. This system developed slowly, layer by layer, as coral organisms built upon previous generations. Growth followed stable conditions, clear water movement, and long-term balance. The reef supports an extraordinary range of life. Fish, marine mammals, and invertebrates depend on its structure for shelter and migration. Movement across the reef is horizontal rather than vertical. Currents shape pathways. Channels guide flow. Open water transitions gradually into dense reef zones. Human interaction here is regulated carefully. Access is limited. Protection zones preserve ecological stability. The reef functions as both barrier and connector, shielding coastlines while linking marine ecosystems across great distances. This is not a place defined by spectacle, but by complexity, a system that only reveals its scale when given time. Coastal systems, where land meets open water. Australia's coastline stretches for tens of thousands of kilometers, forming one of the longest continuous coastal systems in the world. Unlike enclosed shorelines, much of this coast remains open and exposed, meeting ocean without gradual transition. Natural harbors occur where land formation allows shelter. These points became gateways, supporting transport, settlement, and trade. Elsewhere, the coastline remains largely undeveloped, with long sections shaped only by erosion and tidal movement. Movement along the coast follows the shape of the land. Roads curve inland where terrain resists access. Settlements appear where geography permits stability. This balance preserves continuity, allowing human presence without overwhelming the edge of the continent. Australia's coast functions as both boundary and lifeline, defining connection with the wider world. Early coastal cities, access, and constraint. Australia's major cities developed along the coast, not by preference, but by necessity. Water access determined survival. Transport depended on maritime routes. The interior remained vast and difficult to traverse. Cities such as Sydney, Brisbane, and others formed around natural harbors, their layouts shaped by shoreline and elevation. Growth followed available land rather than ambition. Urban expansion adapted to terrain, creating districts defined by geography. Despite modern scale, coastal cities remain oriented toward water. Ports, bays, and river mouths continue to influence movement and structure. These cities reflect Australia's broader pattern, development guided by access, balanced by environmental limits. Scale remains constant, from reef to shoreline, from open water to urban edge. The same principle holds. Australia allows space to remain present. Even where population concentrates, the land resists compression. The journey now turns inland once more, toward ancient formations that shaped the continent long before settlement. Uluru, a geological anchor of the interior. Near the center of the continent stands Uluru, a massive sandstone formation rising from otherwise level ground. Uluru did not form as a mountain. It is the exposed portion of a much larger geological structure, revealed through erosion over immense time. Its presence alters perception of scale. The surrounding land is flat and open, allowing the formation to be seen from great distance. Uluru functions as a reference point, not only geographically but culturally and historically. The area surrounding it remains lightly developed. Access routes are controlled. Movement follows established paths that protect both the land and the significance of the site. Uluru demonstrates how Australia's interior is shaped less by variety and more by continuity. One form held steady over time. Central desert systems, continuity without interruption beyond individual formations. Australia's central deserts extend across vast regions. These are not empty spaces. They are systems, defined by soil composition, water movement, and long-term stability. Vegetation appears where conditions allow. Dry riverbeds trace seasonal paths. Land remains largely unchanged from one horizon to the next. Movement through these regions requires planning rather than speed. Routes follow established tracks, connecting remote communities and essential infrastructure. Human presence remains sparse, reflecting the land's limits. These desert systems reinforce Australia's defining characteristic: space maintained, not filled. Inland plateaus, elevated stillness scattered across the interior, are elevated plateaus formed by ancient geological uplift. These regions sit above surrounding plains, creating subtle shifts in terrain without dramatic elevation. The land here feels stable and quiet. Erosion occurs slowly. Drainage spreads outward, feeding distant river systems. Plateaus function as separators, dividing watersheds, defining regional boundaries, and influencing climate patterns. Few settlements exist here. Those that do are placed deliberately, supported by transport routes rather than surrounding population. The plateaus emphasize Australia's interior rhythm: steady, measured, and enduring. River basins. Movement through dry land. Australia's major river systems travel long distances across dry regions. These rivers do not rush. Their flow responds to seasonal patterns, spreading gradually across floodplains before continuing downstream. River basins support agriculture, transport routes, and inland communities. Towns formed where rivers provide reliability, not abundance, but continuity. Infrastructure aligns with river paths, reinforcing their role as organizers of space. These waterways connect the interior to coastal regions, linking otherwise distant systems into a broader whole. In a land defined by openness, rivers provide structure without enclosure. At this point in the journey, Australia's identity becomes clear. It is not defined by contrast, but by duration. Places are not crowded together. They are given room. Understanding comes not from movement, but from staying. The journey now shifts again, toward regions where land meets colder water and distance reshapes the coast. Southern coastlines, where the continent turns, Australia's southern edge marks a gradual transition between interior space and open ocean. Here, the coastline stretches wide, meeting colder waters that shape movement and settlement in different ways than the north. Land rises and falls gently near the shore, forming cliffs, bays, and long exposed edges. Natural harbors appear only where terrain allows shelter, and development concentrates around these points. The coast remains largely uninterrupted. Long sections show little human presence, preserved by distance and limited access. Movement follows the land's shape. Roads curve inland where cliffs resist passage. Settlements appear where ground provides stability. This coastline reinforces a recurring theme. Australia's edges are defined not by density, but by restraint. Tasmania, separation and continuity. South of the mainland lies Tasmania, an island shaped by separation. Water creates distance, but also protection. Tasmania's landscapes developed with fewer interruptions than much of the mainland. The island's terrain is varied yet cohesive. Mountain systems rise inland, while coastal regions remain deeply connected to surrounding waters. Settlement patterns reflect this balance. Towns remain compact, linked by roads that follow valleys and coastlines. Protected areas occupy large portions of the island, preserving long stretches of land with minimal development. Tasmania represents an intensified version of Australia's broader identity. Space preserved, movement deliberate, and continuity maintained. Temperate regions, stability over time. Australia's temperate regions occupy the southeastern and southern portions of the continent. These areas support agriculture, forestry, and long-term settlement. Landforms here are less extreme, allowing consistent use without heavy modification. Farms and towns develop together, linked by transport routes that connect inland regions to coastal access. This balance created stable communities, large enough to function independently, small enough to remain connected to land. Temperate regions act as anchors, supporting population while maintaining open space. Protected landscapes. Deliberate preservation across Australia, large areas are designated for protection. These regions preserve ecosystems, geological formations, and long-term environmental balance. Access is controlled rather than restricted. Paths and roads allow movement without fragmenting the land. Preservation here is proactive, recognizing the value of land before it is altered. These protected landscapes ensure that Australia's defining feature, space, remains intact. They allow future generations to encounter land that still leads the experience. If this slow journey through Australia feels meaningful, a gentle subscribe helps support future films and keeps these stories alive. The journey continues. Space as identity. From interior deserts to southern coasts, from islands to temperate regions, Australia maintains a consistent rhythm. Places are not rushed. Distance remains visible. Movement follows land, not convenience. The final chapter will bring this journey together, revealing how scale, restraint, and time define the continent as a whole. Australia's largest cities formed along the coast, not as a preference, but as a response to geography. Access to water shaped early settlement, harbors provided shelter, sea routes connected the continent to global movement. Cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and Brisbane grew outward from natural bays and river mouths. Their layouts reflect this origin. Districts arranged along shorelines, transport aligned with water access, and expansion guided by terrain. Despite their size, these cities remain closely tied to natural systems. Coastlines continue to influence daily movement. Urban boundaries often meet open land directly, without long transition. Australia's coastal cities do not replace the land. They sit beside it, adapting to its limits and responding to its scale. Modern Australia. Layers. Without compression, modern Australia developed within an already vast framework. Growth occurred without enclosing space. Infrastructure connects distant regions without filling the land between them. Highways cross long distances. Rail lines link cities and inland centers. Air routes bridge separation without altering ground-level continuity. Cultural life reflects this geography. Communities form around access and movement rather than density. Cities remain distinct from one another, each surrounded by open land that reinforces separation and identity. This spacing preserves clarity, allowing modern systems to function without overwhelming the continent. Human presence in Australia spans tens of thousands of years. Long before modern settlement, Indigenous cultures developed deep relationships with land, water, and seasonal movement. Paths followed natural features. Knowledge passed through observation, rather than alteration. Today, cultural recognition increasingly acknowledges this long continuity. Modern Australia exists alongside much older systems of understanding, a reminder that the land was never empty, only spacious. This coexistence reinforces a core theme. Australia is not shaped by dominance, but by adaptation. Across deserts, reefs, coastlines, cities, and islands, a single truth remains consistent. Australia allows space to remain visible. The land does not hurry. Movement unfolds slowly. Distance retains meaning. Geology remains present. Water follows long paths. Human systems fit within larger patterns. This is a continent defined not by excess, but by endurance. Scale that holds steady, Australia does not reveal itself through contrast alone. It reveals itself through duration, through places allowed to remain open, through systems given time to function, through land that leads every experience. From interior to edge, from ancient rock to modern city, the continent holds its form. Space is not something to overcome here. It is something to respect. If this slow journey through Australia felt meaningful, a gentle subscribe helps support future films and keeps these stories alive. Thank you for traveling across Australia. The next unseen land is already waiting.